Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. In technical companies, the last two key silos are security and quality. Data was once considered a silo, but that is no longer the case. Now, data is the new oil. If security is compartmentalized, it can't scale. We know that it has to fit in all the check boxes and it has to be everyone's responsibility. And as a result, the only option is to join the mainstream. If we talk about security engineers who are trying to have different softwares, different technologies, we are trying to engineer multiple things, we're trying to establish security standards throughout the organization. Then comes the focus of security tools, which is developer friendly. Now, when we talk about developers, we are trying to have them as part of the security as well. That's when we talk about DevOps and DevSecOps. But when we have so many things on their plate, security is again delegated to them. Don't we need people supporting them? So today we are going to discuss the same thing, shift-led strategy with CISOs. And today in the panel we have Anant Shrivastava and Patrick Pitchappa. And about Patrick Pitchappa, he's graduated as an electronics and communication engineer in 1995. After 2 years in electronics, he moved into IT in 1997. He has an amazing story. I've read it, his post recently, how he switched the careers. So Patrick began his IT career as a systems and network engineer with 24 years of experience since then covering all aspects of IT infrastructure and security. He currently works for the Middle East-based Alshia Group, a world-leading retail franchisee operator as a director of information security and risk with responsibilities across Alshia operating markets. Thank you so much, Patrick, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Vandana, for having me.
Thank you. And about Anant, Anant Shrivastava is an information security professional with 12 plus years of experience, of corporate experience with expertise in network, mobile application, and Linux security. He's the technical director for Not So Secure Global Services. During his career, he has been a speaker and a trainer at various international conferences, from Black Hat USA, Asia, EU, to Nullcon, to KubeCon, to many more. He also leads multiple open source projects, from Android Tamer to Code Vigilant to maintaining the archive portal, which is Hacking Archives of India. You should go and check it out. So our panelists today are bringing up two different perspectives. One is an insider perspective in a product firm, and another from an external consultant providing consulting services. So thank you so much, Anand and Patrick, for joining me today. It's such a wonderful feeling to have you both at the panel today, getting different perspectives.
Thank you. Thanks, Vandana. Really excited about this program and being on this panel. So thank you again for giving the opportunity.
Yeah. So to start off, I do want to know from each one of you, starting with Patrick, that DevOps and security teams are working together right now, but still we see some silos. So are we saying that they are individual teams or they are separate teams?
Okay, that's a great question. I don't see a big difference between whether a team is an individual team or a separate team, right? I mean, they pretty much are going to mean the same. But see, the vision of DevSecOps is that all of us, it's kind of like all hands on deck, right? All working together in tandem to automate the whole thing. And there is this DevSecOps is always represented with this indefinite loop where they are, you start one and then you keep going. It's the infinity symbol where you are, but it's the infinity symbol is open-ended, but this is closed-ended because this is an infinite closed loop where you keep going round and round, and you are everybody knows what is supposed to be done. But I think from the companies that I work for and where we are with DevSecOps, we are yet to mature in that angle, I would say. There's a lot of teams that are still working in silos. There are a lot of teams that are still running their own projects. there are a lot of teams that are still, as you said, separate from the main agenda. So a CISO's major um, aim or vision is to make sure this is getting integrated, because if we don't get integrated, then we are as good as the old model, right? Where we are looking at a conveyor belt, where let's say you're manufacturing a TV or manufacturing a car, and the raw materials enter through one gate and they go through the whole conveyor belt where each part gets fit in, and then at the other gate the finished product comes out. But if you look at it, the team that is, if you take a car, the team that is building the doors of the car will be separate from the team that is actually painting the car. So they work very very separately, although it is the same conveyor belt. And that is how the development teams used to work. There used to be and there are actually business analysts who would go and get the requirements, and security had nothing to do with it, right? They would go and they would get the requirements, come, they will talk to the development managers or the architects. The architects will design the ADD or the architectural design document, and then the development teams will start developing, and then the testing teams come into the picture, and only after that, the in the name of VAPT, or vulnerability assessment penetration testing, security teams got involved. And just before the code went into production, we did a bunch of penetration tests, and we would come up with a long list of vulnerabilities, and the project managers would fight with us saying, okay, now we can't go live unless we fix all these vulnerabilities. And so, and I do see this scenario still playing out in quite a bit of places, and quite a bit in the industry as well. So to answer your question, Vandana, I think honestly the maturity level is still way off, and we have a lot of work to do. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Anant.
Yeah, so Patrick actually got the right essence out, that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. From an external consultant point of view, what we have seen so far, I would put it into two categories. There are going to be larger companies where there is a massive team working on things. And when you have large number of people inside one specific team, it is very hard to get them to basically formulate a single team and work as a single unit. So you would find that in larger corporates where there is massive number of developers, massive number of administrators, they still operate in their own dominions. They do work together nowadays. That has been the major influence that has happened with DevOps. They do work together. So Dev and Ops work together, but effectively, it's not one single team called DevOps which does the job. There are two separate teams, one Dev, one Ops. But the contrast would be in, say, startup world or in, say, agile based companies. What you'd find there is going to be a small number of people, and they would basically take up both Dev and Ops responsibility. Security so far has always been on the end of the ladder and not too much involved. And I think that's the whole point of the keyword sec being added into DevOps, so that security gets involved. I've seen gradual progress. I've seen where people have stopped treating security as like that last crying baby who just needs to be satiated, and then we move onwards from there to someone that they need to talk to, they need to interact with. And a lot of it boils down to how do you interact with, so you, when I say, I mean security people, how do security people interact with anyone else in the organization? If we keep that whole attitude of holier than thou, and I am the one who does everything and anything I say is right, you're not going to make any progress. So you have to talk in terms of the language that people understand, and then the synergy can actually be created between the teams. So long answer short, right now, if you look at it, larger organizations, you'd still find individual teams. Smaller organizations, it will mostly be a combined team of DevOps.
Totally agree with you on both the points. Now, on the same lines, when right now there are maturity models that we need to adopt, or maybe we have adopted some of the models wherein we can measure ourselves that are, whether we are maturity 0, 1, 2, 3, where do we stand actually, and whether our teams are working together or not, and with like till where we have reached. That's one point. Now the point comes is that how do we handle the relationship with different teams, specifically if we talk about DevOps or DevOps separately, or business teams or SecOps, because this is like where people say that DevOps is pooping something which security is cleaning. That's what have been the thought, or security is pushing things on development teams or ops teams. And when it comes to the blame game, it all comes, okay, who has done this specifically, to talk about when there is a breach, when that happens, who is going to be the accountable person, who is going to be the responsible person. So how do we handle the relationships between DevOps or DevSecOps or SecDevOps, because there are multiple terminologies which are there. So how do we handle them? To start off with you, Patrick.
Thank you, Vandana. And this is something that I have been kind of voicing as well, right? And you hit the nail on it. Said who takes the blame, correct? Rather than who takes the responsibility, right? At the moment, I know that we are talking about CISOs, which is a Chief Information Security Officer, and I still remember when 5 years ago when I first got my when I first got my offer, my CISO offer, right, and I joined Society General here in Bangalore as their first Chief Information Security Officer for the Bangalore location. A friend of mine, I just posted this, I think, on LinkedIn, and a friend of mine messaged me on WhatsApp saying, the way I read it was, your title says scapegoat. Said seriously, and at that time I didn't know what he was talking about, and then later I called him. I said, dude, what's going on? And then he said, CISOs are the ones whose heads are rolling if there is a breach, or if there is a something else that happens, somebody breaks into your system, or somebody, whether it's an internal breach or external breach, it's the CISO's responsibility. And I said, well, that's how life is, right? Somebody has to do it. But I think that that scapegoat strategy for CISOs still kind of is prevalent. I think it is slowly, again, there is a maturity curve there. Slowly we are getting ahead of that. Now, going back to the Equifax breach, which was one of the largest breaches in the history of the cyber world, where more than 140 million user records were stolen, and that was a huge breach. And the breach was huge because the nature of the data that was stolen was all related to credit rating, where your financial information, your where you have your loans, and it's kind of like in the United States, it's basically your social security number, your address, your phone number, and a lot of personal information that was stolen. Now, after this hack happened and this became global news, breaking news everywhere, a week later their CISO was fired. Okay. And that became news as well, and there was a lot of talk on LinkedIn and other forums, that the CISO was fired. And that's the time quite a bit of CISOs raised their voices, and they said, why does this, I mean, the CISO getting fired is one, but why was not the head of development fired, right? I mean, these guys write really substandard code, and their code is not secure enough. They just put whatever they can put together and push it into production. They don't even give us time to do a proper VAPT, a proper time to fix it, a repeat VAPT to make sure all the vulnerabilities are fixed. There is no attack surface scans. There is no internal, external, simple scans also, right? There is no cyber scorecard. I mean, nothing. I mean, you guys, just whatever it is, you just put things into production, and then the CISO gets fired because the CISO, all he did was open the gate, and but but the stuff was already corrupt and maybe vulnerable. That's the right word to use. And I think that mentality has not changed much. Even today in big organizations, the CISO ends up making a lot of explanation for all that is happening, whether it's a ransomware attack or whether it's an outright data breach, or whether it is something else. The CISO still gets blamed. The reason I'm telling this is DevOps or DevSecOps is a combined responsibility. It's a culture, right? It is where I was talking about requirement gathering in the previous question, and in the DevSecOps model or culture, security gets involved right there. There should be a security architect sitting with the software architects when the requirements are gathered, and so it starts there. And so it becomes a combined responsibility, and then it's the team that takes the blame. Yeah, I mean, hacks can happen, right? I mean, on a lighter note, because of all that risk and the threats that are around, is why the CISO position itself is today existing, correct? So yeah, unless there is a threat, unless there is no threat of war, there is no military that is required for a country. So basically that's where the security for a company also comes, right? The analogy basically. So at the to answer your question, Vandana, I think we are still, development is separate, operations is separate, security is is kind of like the link or the encompassing a team that is as we call transversal, which is kind of like trying to see bring the whole thing into one, whether it's infrastructure or applications or data. It's kind of like at the moment we are a bit not having that central culture that we are trying to implement. And so at the moment blame is still going to be falling on the CISO and nobody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And you mentioned a point wherein CISO is a scapegoat. A lot of times that we have seen that's happening, not just with Equifax, but many other companies. When some breach happens, the first person to get fired is a CISO. Wherein now CISOs are starting to get a seat on the table, board table. Still, we see a lot of things which are still underway or getting to the maturity stage. Now, over to you, Anant.
So Patrick actually brought in a very interesting point about culture, and that's where I think the major problem still is. And over a couple of years in which I've been dealing with DevSecOps implementations and having discussions with people, I've been very much focused on one aspect: de-risk individuals, focus on collective responsibility. So if a hack happens, it's not one person who was responsible. It does not matter if it was CISO or if it was a junior or if it was an intern. It's a collective responsibility, right? From dev to ops to security. All of us have failed in the whole process somewhere, and that's why this has happened. The moment you de-risk individuals, the moment there is no question about, hey, this happened, who gets to be on the crossbow? When that part is out of equation, that's when people start looking at, okay, something has happened wrong. What can we collectively do to fix it? And a lot of places that shift has happened, and they've seen that result where individuals are more concerned about the organization, their reputation, and getting the stuff sorted. And I've also seen a large number of organizations where it does not happen, and the individuals are more focused on, hey, I want you to sign this particular format of documentation in triplets, CC these 5 people, so that if something happens, I am not on the crosshair, someone else gets the blame. And that situation keeps on happening. So the part about handling relationships, there are 2 angles. One, right now, you basically have to deal with the organization, just like the quotation goes that when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So you deal with the organization where you are. but effectively your aim should be to move towards a scenario where you basically convince everyone that, hey, I am not saying that you are wrong. I'm not saying that I am wrong. Somewhere someone is going to have a goof up. And when that happens, neither you blame me nor I blame you, and we both work towards fixing the problem. Now, this gets interesting when you're dealing with business, because the question that comes from the business side is, I get all of it, but when something goes wrong, what do I tell my board? What do I tell my investors? Who gets to take the blame? And that's where, again, the education is required that, hey, no single person is responsible. It's a collective failure. Everyone takes the whole blame. Now, you can't fire the entire company. So if all of us are taking the blame and we are saying, hey, give us a few days, we are taking corrective actions, we are sorting it out, and we're going to give you an update on what corrective actions we are taking. Board should be reasonable enough to understand the situation. If they're not reasonable enough, maybe getting fired might be a better option in that kind of a scenario. So yeah, that's my take on, when dealing with relationships, you would have to, and this is one problem that I've seen with security. People basically get into an organization fresh and they're like, I'm the boss. I'm going to start dictating the terms I want to dictate from day one. It is not going to work out. The other people are there in the group. They have been there for some time. Respect their experience, understand the equation of the system, and then try and work towards correcting it or aligning yourself with the equation. So that, yeah, that's my take on that.
Now, again, a question for you, Anant, on the same lines which you just said. Like, it's better to get fired, but how much of the shift left is in-house? And depending on tools and different vendors that we have, think about them. Like, we have so many people working around.
So when we talk about in-house versus vendors, there are two categories of vendors that are there. There is a category of vendor which is a service provider, and there is a category of vendor which is a product provider. So a product provider would be people who are building these security products which could be plugged into your CI/CD pipeline. And service providers would be people who would say, okay, yeah, you can buy this product, but I'll help you configuring it and getting it into the system. Now, if you ask me, I generally act as that service provider. But even in that position, my suggestion to anyone would be, look at your own scenario. It is not necessary that you buy the best and the greatest product that is available in the market, because there would be a large number of scenarios where that product would be useless in your specific scenario, in your specific setup. So I keep saying this one line. When it's about general processes, we say your mileage may vary. When it comes to DevSecOps, your mileage will most definitely vary with every single organization that you deal with. So one tool that your friend has used in their organization is not going to be directly usable here. So you will have to do a lot of testing, correlation, checks, balances. You can delegate that job to an external vendor to get the base pipeline running, to get the base setup done where you are at a ground level, let's say. But you need to have a team of your own. You need to have at least a very small skeleton crew within your organization, no matter how small, how big your organization is, who understands what those tools are, how they work, and how is the vendor operating on those tools. You let the vendor deal with it if you want, or you can take everything in-house after a certain point. But in any given scenario, there should be someone within your organization who knows what is going on in the system. So right now, if you ask me, a lot of people are basically focusing on building their own in-house tools, because everyone is realizing with tools available in market, the turnaround time is very high. So if you run a scan, it's not going to finish in 15 minutes anyhow. So you have to write your own custom wrappers, you have to write your own profiles and get things done in a shorter span of time. So a lot of in-house tool work is going on. But when it comes to offloading it to third parties, yes, that's a trajectory a lot of people are following, especially organizations which do not have, say, security people in-house. And if I am one of the vendor who is basically dealing with that, I basically tell them, hey, I'm going to handle all of it, but can we also get some people on board in your company on your payroll, so that if in future I am not there or my company is not there, you are not left in ocean alone to handle all the situation. So you need to have someone who understands how the situation is. What do you say, Patrick?
You absolutely hit the nail on its head. The way I understood DevSecOps is and what currently where I know DevSecOps is being implemented in a few organizations that I have some insight into, and in our own organization as well. That skeleton team is very important. You definitely hit the nail on its head, and that's where it starts, because that team kind of is going to be your own team there, right? And who understand these are the 3, 5, or whatever number you want to have. I don't think it should be more than 5. Then it's not a skeleton team anymore.
Yep.
So let's say 3 to 5 people that you have, 3 being minimum and 5 being max, is the team that will kind of make sure the entire loop of this DevSecOps is in place, and they are the ones who are kind of the governance team, which will be maintaining the whole DevSecOps pipeline. And this team ideally should be sitting under the CISO, because all said and done, DevSecOps, the major stakeholder is the CISO, and of course the app dev head, or the development head, who will also be the co-stakeholder here, and the CIO oversees both of them, kind of. So that's in an ideal world how things will be set up. Now, coming to the point of the question of how much shift left is happened. I think there is a lot of emphasis nowadays, and the development teams also are under extreme pressure to deliver. Now, time to market is a phrase that came long time ago. Even 20 years ago, when I was with Visa, the first time that's when I first time heard the term time to market, and you want to push things through, and this was the old waterfall method, where 2 releases in a year it'd be great. I mean, after every release, the entire team went out and partied their hearts out, and came home drunk, basically, because that much work goes into the whole release, I should say. But today, you are having a release pretty much every week or every day. I mean, I think we will get to a point where we will have a release every hour. I mean, I don't know whether that will happen or not, but releases have become so rapid. What we call the CI/CD pipeline, and and the way things are changing. The shift left approach is unavoidable, because you are writing the code, you are testing, you are putting it through the security assessments, and you are releasing the code, and all this has to happen within a very short time. Right? If you take the analogy of making a movie, there will be a group, the director, the producer, the main actors will sit, and first they will talk about the movie, then they will come up with a script, then they will start on a day, and then they will release the movie. I mean, that's how it used to be in software development also. But today it's like, everything in terms of making the movie has to happen in a day, right? And that includes the recording and the re-recording and everything, right? So apparently we are left with no other choice than to shift left, than to start the testing, whether it is going to be test-driven development or behavior-driven development, right? The TDD, BDD, these are the the key terms that we use for the development, the testing that we use, and then bringing the tools like SAST, which is the static application security testing, and then bringing dynamic application security testing tools as well. And as Anant said, these tools, in a large environment like Google and Amazon and Microsoft and other big banks, which are also under the scanner for this. The tools must be customized, so your engineering teams are also working closely with you to customize, put that wrapper that Anant was talking about, to make sure that you are having the tool that is fitting into your environment, and then you are running the tool, and it's as rapid as possible. So it is a combination of both. It is a combination of the business requirement, it is the combination of the market requirement, and it's the combination of the efficiency in which you can deliver the code, and it has to be a proper code without any blemish, without any bugs, and without any vulnerability. Right? I mean, the testing team looks for bugs, and the security team looks for vulnerabilities. Now we are all one in all, like all in one, right? Like the three musketeers, one for all for one. So we are kind of like, all of us were working together. And the three musketeers here are development, testing, and security. So basically, that's how we are all working towards. I just want to quote an example here. While I was doing the research on this, I came to know that Sony, when they manufacture their televisions, there is no testing, because the whole automation that is built into the manufacturing of a television set, it eliminates anything that has a manufacturing defect, or anything that is not working before it reaches the end of the conveyor belt. And that's exactly what we are talking about here, right? We are talking about a culture where the code is ready and everything is built into it. And so when the code is ready, it is already fully tested and it's fully security assessed as well. So it has become very, very important, unavoidable. And if we don't adopt this shift left culture, the companies that don't adopt it are going to be left out. And so the whole, where I started, the time to market, these guys will be left behind, and the competitors will beat them in their game, and nobody wants that, right? So that's where we are actually.
Right. I totally agree with you that if the companies don't look at shift left strategy right now, then they will be left behind. And at the same time, if we talk about security operations, so security operation is something which is very, very important for any organization. Because if I say about security, a lot of people, or I would say most of the CISOs, do talk about the incident response process,
Yeah.
which deep down goes down into shift left strategy as well. So how do we offload it to a third party vendor, or do we handle in-house? What's the rationale behind using it, and do we involve the security team with the DevOps teams, or is it okay to leave it with the security operations center team, like a SOC team? So how do we handle that? Because when it comes to fixing the bugs, it again boils down to coming to operations team, to development team. So I'll start off with you, Patrick.
So this is an age-old question. I think this has been asked and asked many times. What do you outsource and what can you keep in house? Honestly, I don't think there's a the right answer, or anybody got it right. You did mention the security operations center, and what I've seen as an industry best practice is outsource it to a third-party vendor, and certain other things like your attack surface scanning, your daily scanning, outsource it to an external vendor, because that would give you that extra, or the outside pair of eyes, which would do the monitoring and which would do the testing basically. But I don't think we are. So yeah. So again, some companies have the whole development, testing, and security outsourced as well. But I don't think there is a there is a synergy there, right? It'll be probably, even if let's say even if you're giving it to one of the IT services companies, and that company would bring in their own development team, their own tech, testing team, and their own security team, and they will again be working in silos, right? So the culture that we are talking about in terms of whether the DevSecOps model is completely in place, I don't think it is. We are there yet. At least that's what I'm seeing in the industry right now. But the point about whether we can outsource or not, it is perfectly depending on your market needs, your business needs. What's your company strategy? What are your regulatory requirements? I mean, if you're a bank, and regulators will not allow you to outsource a few key functions or teams that you just cannot do it, right? So that taking all that into perspective is where the technical, the CEO, the CIO, CTO, and the CISO, and of course the CFO, from the cost perspective, to sit and make a decision. And this is a very high level, board level decision, where what you're going to outsource. And the CISO, as you said, Vandana, in the beginning, today has a seat at the table, where we can give our inputs and say, this is how we want to do it, and this is doing this way is going to be efficient as well, and that will be complemented by the CIO or the CTO, and there I think we have that strategy. But as I said in the beginning, we don't have a right or wrong answer. It all depends on how your industry is placed, and what is your business strategy, and what gives you better bang for the buck. That's how it is going to be, basically.
Right. Thank you so much. Anant, for you, how do you convince the board specifically for shift left strategies? Because when we talk about a CISO has so many functions to take care of. DevOps or DevSecOps is just one function. And that's my understanding, that CISO has to take care of SOC, to risk management, to whatnot. Or are we going to have multiple CISOs who are going to take care of multiple functions, which is financially and practically not possible? So how do we handle that?
So I'll take a jab at the previous question first and then come to this one. The part about, do you offload security operations? So I have not been someone who has done the offloading, but I've been someone who has been on the receiving side of the answers, why people have done this or why people have not done this. And what I've basically found is two type of, say, organizations. One which has a very clear focus on, I want to focus on what I want to do. So if their focus is on building product, they would try and offload every single bit that they don't want to deal with to a third party. They pay up a money, they would want them to handle all that pain. But like Patrick mentioned, regulatory requirements would come into picture. But if the regulatory requirements are not there, this is the go-to strategy by a large number of organizations. I don't want to deal with it. I would pay money, someone else deals with it. If something goes wrong, they become the scapegoat. Right. Again, the whole blame culture comes up. The other set of organizations, again, not focusing on the regulatory part, because if regulatory wants it, you have to do it. But there is another set of organizations who are basically paranoid about the data that goes out of the systems. And they would want every single thing within the organization. Now, this is where your other question also comes in about, should we even have multiple CISOs? I've actually seen that started to happen now, where the organization is big enough to actually afford 4 or 5 different, not exactly CISOs, but different titles, but they operate under a larger umbrella of, they may directly report to a CISO per se, or they may report to someone like a CIO, but they effectively do the job of a CISO within a specific confines of a section within the company. So branching out of the CISO role has also started happening. People have started picking out that, hey, this is the technical side of things, this is the compliance side of things, this is the governance side of things. So separate people handling with those things separately. So that also happens. The major factor around, like what Patrick said, besides the second pair of eye, the point comes up, do I want to take the pain? Do I want to be the sole person responsible when something goes wrong? Or do I want someone else to be that second pair of eye and a second set of uh, sort of head to be rolled around in case of a problem? And that defines your sort of tolerance factor around where you want to keep the operations. As far as convincing the board, more of it boils down to showing the return on investment. And the return on investment, so far, the way I have basically told people and the way it has worked for us has been to show them the difference between how things have changed if they were just asking us to do a pen test versus if we were involved in the whole DevSecOps process. And we basically work this out with the stakeholders. We get them to a point like, this is your development cost. This is where you paid me X amount of money to do the pen test. This was the time frame I took to deliver the report, and then this was the time frame you needed to do the sort of patching in the environment, and then the retest cost. Now compare that with something that can give you those results early in the process, and we then show them whatever we found, how that could have been automatically detected maybe earlier in the process. There would be scenarios like business logic flaws. You can't find them via automated process. It will come down to manual inspection. But the number of business logic flaws would be far less compared to the other flaws. And when the pen tester is solely focusing on business logic flaw, they can again give you better worth of your money. So that's the way by which we have been pushing it around, that, hey, this is the ROI. This is how you can show that, yes, there is a value, and you should be moving towards that.
Patrick, over to you.
Thank you. I think Anant covered pretty much everything, but I'll just tell you my experience in this. When we went for DevSecOps, what really the board liked was first of all, elimination of these silos, which was always a problem, right? And I know we talked about this blame game a lot. But when we said that, okay, with DevSecOps, we'll all take the blame, the board actually liked it. Usually it is okay, give me one name, right? Okay, who's that one name? But I think around the world, the board members are also beginning to understand that, whatever we do, our attackers are 50 steps ahead of us. And they have a lot of technology that we don't use, and we can't implement in a corporate environment as well, right? So the boards are slowly starting to understand that, yeah, these attackers are much more efficient and much more cunning than what we can think of, right? And somehow or the other, these guys sneak through, and it is really, how many CISOs can you fire? I mean, or how many CIOs can you fire? I mean, and you keep on firing, it is only starting to build that toxic culture. And going back to Equifax, I don't think Equifax was able to find another CISO really quick, because whoever was the next CISO was knew that a knife was hanging over their head all the time, right? And I think that old-fashioned management also is management efficiency, management strategies are also changing, because we have some wonderful management schools around the world, and so they are also looking at case studies and looking at how the whole management should work. And so coming back to the board, I think the board is also maturing. Board is also understanding that this is how it should be. And when the culture change is what that we are taking to the board, they actually like it. And then secondly, the efficiency part, where we are saying now we won't be taking 2 weeks to do a pen test, and then 1 week or 2 weeks for the development team to fix all the vulnerabilities, then another week for us to do another pen test to make sure that none of these vulnerabilities are still there in the code, and and project managers have been crying because 6 weeks of pen test. VAPT is a 6-week exercise. That's how I've seen always, right? And this is as early as 2005, 2006 when I started in a pen testing team. So that's how it has been. And it is. But today, when the board says, for the board, coming back to the efficiency, the time to market, and how quick the product is moving out, especially for product companies, right? Or companies where technology is playing a huge role, right? Where whether it is an online transaction or companies. Even let's take Cars24 as an example, right? Cars24 is a lot happening on the online space. You go online, you fill everything, and and if things change, right, you have to have the dynamic change on the website before anybody else has it. Otherwise, you are losing it. So this is just one example, and that applies to Flipkart or Amazon or anybody who's dealing with the internet, the power of the internet, the cyberspace, and customers sitting across the world to bank on and to make their business prosper. And so when we go to the board and say, oh yeah, we make now changes, it's not those releases, 2 releases a year. No, it is like 2 releases a day, basically, or 2 releases a week. And board kind of thinks, okay, great. I mean, this is good. And that is how CISOs, I should say, who are listening to this, please structure your strategies and your request to the board in such a way that you are showing efficiency, you are showing the unity among yourselves, you are showing that the culture is changing and we are all working together, and the board will like it. The board will like it because as we talked previously, shift left is something that is not going to be avoided. You cannot avoid it. It's unavoidable. And at the moment, that is the best strategy that we have on the table, and that's what the world is moving towards. And the board has to now, approve this, give you the budget, and if the board doesn't, then you tell them that we are going to be left back or left behind, and the board will quickly, give you the budget. So that is the strategy, I would say. And the boards are understanding it nowadays if we present it in the right way.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And while we come to the end of the session, I do want to take or give you both the stage, and if you would like to just share your inputs for the people who are listening. So I'll start off with Anant this time.
Okay, I think my one-liner input would be, besides tooling, besides technology, focus more on culture and people. The blame game thing that we've talked about is going to be a critical factor in any sort of engagement that you can think about.
Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you. What I'm going to say is, see, DevSecOps represents a natural and necessary evolution in the way development organizations approach security. In the past, security was tacked on to software at the end of the development cycle, which Anant explained very well, almost as an afterthought, or almost as how do you put, the holier than thou, where we are saying, okay, you have to go through my checklist before you get into production, correct? And by a separate security team, and was tested by a separate quality assurance team. Now we are one IT team, and this is, I think, the dreams of many a CIO around the world. I know there was always this: we are one team, one IT team, or one organization where we all work together. But that dream, I think, is now becoming a reality with DevSecOps. And usually, a software tester will not know the big picture, but with DevSecOps, everybody is plugged into the bigger picture and the business strategies and the whole business of the organization. And when that happens, right, the responsibility is shouldered equally across, and that, I think, is the best strategy. and the blames are now dropped. The finger pointing is now dropped. The politics is now dropped. The unnecessary rivalries are now dropped, right? And people are more focused on work, and it's all of us holding hands and getting things done. I think a lot of CIOs would be, at the end of the day, smiling and be able to relax because the teams are working together, and there is very less conflict resolution as well. So that's my take on this, and I really want DevSecOps to blossom across the world, across the industry, and the shift left really happens. So looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Vandana, and thanks, Anant. Your inputs were so fascinating, remarkable. I learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much for all your inputs and insights.
So just to summarize, sorry. Summarize that DevSecOps is everyone's responsibility. And when we talk about bridging in all the teams, it's very important that they break the silos and start speaking with each other. If not, we will see all the breaches that we've seen in the past, or maybe some major breaches. And now we have started to talk about supply chain attacks and what not we have started seeing. So it's very, very important for all of us to concentrate towards shift-led strategy and start adopting a kind of a culture wherein we know that the end product would be majorly secure product, if not 100%, but 99.9% secure, wherein even if there are few things left here and there, that can be taken care of when by the teams, with the teams working together. Thank you so much, Patrick and Anant, for joining me today. It was wonderful speaking with you. Such a pleasure to have you both.
Same here, and looking forward to be talking to you, both of you, in many other forums as well. Both of you take care. Really nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.